Oh, there's Opal. I'm filming this video in the donkey pen at the therapeutic farm where I'm living right now. Hi, I'm Summer Karen. This is my YouTube channel. I don't really know what I'm doing with it or why I'm making it. I'm just feeling called to like share, intuitively, I guess. And right now I'm thinking a lot about trauma and rewiring and relearning, and it's a lot. It's a tricky process and it's super complex and multifaceted, and I had like a really difficult childhood. I had a very, very challenging childhood with like a lot of adults in my life treating me really poorly and teaching me that I had to betray myself as like a protective mechanism in order to belong or in order to be accepted, or this is Coco, or like my authentic voice was quieted. And I think that's the case for like most people in school too. Just like the school system is like kind of inherently severing the way that it is, like severing us in our internal worlds. And there's a lot I could go into about that, just to start with No Bad Parts, a book by Richard Schwartz. I think everyone should read that book, honestly. Oh, this is Gypsy. I don't think that's politically correct, but it's her name. Hello. These beautiful mountains behind me. But so my brain's like really traumatized right now. I'm 19, and basically everything in my life started to change really radically when I had a near-death experience when I was 17. And I started smoking weed too as a 16-year-old as a protective mechanism in toxic environments, and that really kind of fried my brain for a bit too. I recently went to rehab, and now I'm like just over 6 months sober and living at this beautiful therapeutic farm, supporting recovery too, and healing and all sorts of beautiful things in community. And I feel so grateful and blessed to have this opportunity. Oh, the sun's coming out a little bit. But my brain in a lot of ways and my like psyche feels very fragmented right now, and it feels really difficult. I'm learning to identify less with my brain and fact check myself or do check-ins with people and be like, hey, is it like with my friends, be like, hey, did it rub you the wrong way when I said this or that? Or like, even though it feels really extreme in my brain, like I might check in a way where it doesn't seem as extreme because it's usually not an extreme thing. So fact checking myself like that has been really helpful, because they're always like, no, what? Like, I don't know what you mean. Yeah, it just feels really difficult to be in my brain right now, to be with like how my brain like dissociates sometimes, like pretty often, and like I'm getting more grounded and more landed, but it was like a protective mechanism to dissociate, and like the disorganization and the chaos, and like rebuilding my brain after smoking all of this weed too for 3 years. And it's a lot. Like I'm rereading No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz right now, and it's basically he's the creator of IFS therapy, internal family systems, And basically Western culture, for the most part, has subscribed to the idea of like the mono mind, that there is like one self and then there's all these different thoughts within the mind. But Richard Schwartz, he sees it differently, where there's all these different parts of us, and sometimes, a lot of the times, like these parts of us are out of alignment from like our authentic self, which was shaped through trauma or through the school system or just through how we're raised in this culture as kids, and like taught basically to unlearn our authentic creativity. And then there's like all these other layers of it that can be like trauma induced, or these pieces of like our psyche get stuck at a certain age if there's like a traumatic thing that happened or something, or we were told to like not express ourselves in a certain way in school or something like that, and a part of our psyche can get stuck there, and that creates like a part of ourself. And then there's like, that's like a fragmented part of ourself. And a lot of times these are really vulnerable young parts of ourselves, and then we create these other protective mechanisms around them to protect those young vulnerable parts of ourselves. And like those protective mechanisms, that's like another part of ourselves, and like can blend, that part blends with us, because a lot of times they're stuck in that age and they think we're still in that situation, they think we're still in that age because the psyche was developed like at that time, like made a decision like, oh, I have to be this way, or I have to act in this way to protect this part of myself, or to hide this part of myself, to belong in the world, or to be safe in the world. So especially when people go through like a lot of trauma in their childhood, there's all this fragmentation and all these parts of ourselves that can really be at conflict too. And but these burdens that these parts of ourselves carry are separate from actually who they are. Like the burden of having to protect this part of ourselves, or the burden of having to hide a certain part of ourselves, that is separate from that part in itself. That is not the essence of that part. And then this goes into a whole other thing of like how our internal world is a reflection of our external world, and how we relate with the world, and then globally and culturally how that culture is reflected by the internal monomind system that is by and large how society works today, I guess, especially like in the States or in like the Western culture, where it's like, for example, like a bad habit or something, it's like the approach is to like shun that part and be like, no, we need to stop doing that, we just need to use willpower, we need to force it to stop, which then can create like this polarization within the self. And instead of looking at that bad habit as like a facet of the mono mind, looking at that as like a part of ourself that is protecting us in some way, or got us through a really hard time, or there's something else underneath the symptom of like that habit. For example, for me it was like smoking weed, like as one example. And it wasn't like about the smoking weed though, it was about what was underneath that and what that was protecting, and how that got me through a difficult time in my life. And I'm learning to rewire and get to the root of it. And there's just so many different parts, and right now it's like, whoa, it feels so overwhelming, where like I'm clear enough and I'm sober and I'm like in a safe environment now, really for like one of the first times in my life, and I feel so grateful for that. And also it's like, wow, like that traumatic childhood really affected my brain. And even now in this moment I feel fragmented and I feel all over the place, and I feel kind of spacey and like dissociated, and it's like there's so many parts and it's so multifaceted and there's so many fragmentations, and like going in and rewiring those parts with love and holding them, and getting underneath the surface of what actually is happening, and with love and with kindness, so that those parts of ourselves can actually transform into their essence self and come into alignment and support us, because they don't actually want to be in that part that's working against our authentic self or our essence self. They want to support us, and those parts took on those burdens because in that time it was really necessary, because they really care about the self and they want us to survive and they want us to do well, but sometimes they just need a little bit rewiring to let them know who we are now, or to see them and appreciate them for what they did for us at that time, and to just give them some love, appreciation, tell them who we are now and that they don't have to be that way anymore, and they can, and it's like they naturally transform. And Richard Schwartz, he does such a great job of explaining this and writing about it. Like really, I would just recommend that book to everyone, because then it shows up in our world too today, of like how the political system works, and like polarization, and how like the prison system works in the United States especially. It's like, oh, these people who may have done something bad or wrong, or like, let's just make them as a person bad or wrong and shove them into a box and get them far away from society and treat them as criminals and treat them really poorly. I don't know if people can hear me, but like in Norway, I think, or other countries where like they really work on rehabilitating prisoners, and like the guards are taught to make friends with them and to care about them as people and to get to know them, and then it's like actually transform that part, because humans aren't, it's like this assumption with the mono mind of like how humans are inherently these bad habits or these selfish instincts or whatever, instead of seeing those as protective mechanisms, which then creates that cycle, like the placebo effect, where it creates the cycle of creating more of that in our world just from those assumptions. And so it's like the prison system, it's like in the States, it's like a quarter of the world's prisoners, because they're like, people are assuming that they're bad, people are polarizing them, people are shoving them away, and like, let's just get them away from society. And then it's like, can be really racially charged too, and like lots of other inequities and just assumptions, instead of those people being in really protective mechanisms or really hard times, and like seeing these as like good people who had really difficult life circumstances and took on burdens and don't know how to unburden themselves and don't know how to see themselves differently, because the whole world has shunned them into a box, which it's like, whoa, if we're doing that in our internal world, that's reflecting in the physical world too. And it's like, how can we move with more compassion for ourselves, compassion for our internal world, and love for our internal world, and then that reflects in compassion for other people in the world. And it's like, to change the systems of our world, we need to change our internal systems. That's what I'm learning how to do right now, and it's messy and it's painful and it's difficult, and you need support from other people. You really need support from other people. We need community. We can't do it alone. Like, it's really important to have support from other people to be able to go into these vulnerable places too, like people who are able to really stay rooted in themselves, or like IFS therapists specifically. Like for me, it's been like my spiritual coaches and people, and now after having that foundation with them, like I'm able to go in more myself and understand more of what's going on, but still it's like I need support with it. Because a lot can come up, and going into these very vulnerable places, that can lead to other like protective mechanisms that are like the firefighters that are afraid of going to these vulnerable places. So then other protective mechanisms might come out, where then you'll want to go talk to those parts, and it's like all interconnected, and looking at the patterns and the systems within yourself, and mapping that and going back to it as a daily practice. It's big and it's complex and it's messy, and I'm like, whoa, it feels overwhelming. But it's just like, that's how massive change is created. It's just a little tiny bit at a time. So I'm just doing like a little bit at a time, and I'm feeling different and it's shifting. And I'm also still noticing how my brain feels really traumatized, and I'm identifying with it though less and less, which is so exciting through like meditation and just shifting my perspective of like, oh wait, not actually believing every thought or believing every story of my brain, and checking in with like that essence self, or like that spiritual self that I feel really connected with, especially after my near-death experience when I was 17. It's like, whoa. It's so messy though, but I just like, I have this faith that like I just keep doing a little bit at a time, and then like someday I'll look back and I'll be like, whoa, like I feel so different. I'm also about to start neurofeedback next week, so I'm so excited about that. Like that really helps rewire the brain and speed up the process of rewiring from trauma and like smoking weed and other things. And like, I just feel so grateful for where my life is at now and where I'm moving towards. It's really exciting. I don't know exactly what the message of this video was. Maybe it's just about how rewiring our internal world, that's really rewiring the world, the external world, because it's all interconnected. Yeah, and I'm noticing so much more compassion in how I see the world now, when I'm seeing more compassion in my internal world, which is very exciting. So I'm gonna end the video with that. Yeah, I hope anyone who watches this video, I hope that you find some compassion for yourself and love, and bringing together the fragmented pieces instead of polarizing them or making them wrong, because they all are little essences, and even if they're carrying a burden that's covering up the essence, they still are the essence. And just show your part some love today. Yeah.